Need to call to order the August 8th, 2016 budget hearing for the Board of Education. Julie, do we have anybody that's signed up? No? Should we give a couple minutes? Just, I think we're good. Since
They have an opportunity when we get to that item.
I didn't speak again. Okay. So do I need to ask for a motion and then close it out, or can I just?
You actually don't have to close it until we get to that.
Okay.
You need to open it until we get to
Okay, so we just go right into the, okay, so we will go right into the regular session for the Board of Education. First thing we needed to do is approve an agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Thanks, Shannon.
Second.
Thanks. Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Recognition of audience, which I don't believe we have anybody. So next item is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are those that are considered routine and are adopted by one motion unless any board member of the, or the superintendent requests that an item be removed. The item or items removed are voted on separately. First of all, I think, Shannon, do you have a retirement?
Yes, I do. Would like to recognize Nedra Rogers for her 15 years of service and devotion to this community and its schools. Congratulations on your retirement.
I move the Board of Education adopt the items listed on the consent agenda.
Yes. Thanks, Chris. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Jessica. Janice?
Sanborn,
Yes.
Adair,
Yes.
Fincher,
Yes.
yes, Harmon,
Yes.
Ingram,
Yes.
Kimball.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0.
Okay, moving on to the report from the president of the board. I don't have one tonight, so let's move on to the superintendent.
So first of all, thank you to those of you here and to the board for participating in the board goals session. Very productive time that we had here. Good 2 plus almost 2.5 hours of time put into that. So I do want to introduce Joanna Lavacek from the Lawrence Journal World. So she's our new reporter for the educational beat here, and she's been previously reporting in the arts and entertainment. And she graduated from KU, grew up in Wichita, and got to spend a little bit of time with her on Friday, I guess, and Julie showed her around and introduced her to a lot of folks. So welcome.
Thank you.
Well, we were excited this last week to have almost 100 new teachers come join us. I had an opportunity to speak with them, and they had 4 days of induction, and really solid group. Got to interact with them a little bit out at the College and Career Center also, and watch our teaching and learning and HR divisions, spend a little time with them. There's a lot of collaboration. I mentioned it during board goal setting that goes into making that event happen. And I also mentioned that we felt like the results from the survey, the feedback we got from the survey was really top notch. So some of the best survey results we've received. So I think that or accommodations to our staff and for all the work that they've done and the positive adjustments they've made. So and it's also a tribute to the facilitation of those meetings and those sessions. Our learning coaches, our curriculum facilitators are just a really good group. So thank you to those folks. The first in a series of parent nights to discuss the goals for Learning Forward Future Ready, distribution of iPads, middle schools. So those meetings at the high school start tonight, and then we'll carry forward in the next over the next couple of weeks. A lot of excitement about the rollout, so it's fun to see. I get a lot of positive feedback, and looking forward to kind of watching that transpire over the next couple of weeks. Board members, teachers, and staff are invited to attend our back-to-school kickoff, 8 a.m. on Friday at the Free State High School gym. Reminder to those involved in that it's a district PD day. We have First Student that's offering shuttle services from Rock Chalk Park and from ESDC here, departing at 7:30 a.m. So the traffic will be heavy. So we're encouraging carpooling and using those shuttles and to alleviate the parking and the issues and congestion. So I want to invite parents, students, parents, staff, and the rest of the community to Confabularium, which is Saturday from 9 to 2 at Free State. That has been a growing event over the last couple of years, lots of attendance. We don't expect anything less this year. So we're under its free festival, excuse me, of making and creativity with activities for all ages, including adults. So come with your kids. We appreciate our co-host, Callahan Creek, who we honored last board meeting, for joining us and offering this annual community event. School starts next Wednesday, believe it or not. They're coming for grades 1 through 9. 7th and 8th graders will start 2-hour delayed schedule on that day due to 6th grade orientation activities. Our high school freshmen also attend on Wednesday for a half-day orientation, but our 10th through 12th graders don't start till the day after that on Thursday. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Kyle. Board commentary? Sure.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to reiterate what Kyle was talking about as far as confabularium. I know that several of you guys attended in years past. We have gone, this will be our 3rd year, and my children have never had so much fun in it seems like a short window, like 4 or 5 hours, where you had to drag them away. I know last year, as they were closing up, there were lines of kids that were still trying to make and create, and it really does hit all areas. So I'm going to be there with my business as well. So anybody in the community, if you're nothing to do on a Saturday, please join us. It's going to be more fun. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. So.
Thanks, Chris. Anybody else? No? Okay, so let's move on to our first report, which is the results of Patron Insights District Climate Survey. With Kyle, are you actually presenting this?
I'm actually going to
Hand it
introduce
off.
the guy who's presenting
Okay.
it. So just to remind you that Patron Insight had helped us with a climate survey, and we engaged them this spring in that conversation. That was based off of just some of the feedback that I'd received from my State of the District conversations. And so Ken here is going to present the results of that survey. We had a lot of participation and some good feedback that has helped directed our board goal-setting process. And so he's going to walk through that, take us through some slides, tell us a little bit about using his expertise and expertise from his lens on what we can use that information for and how we should view it. So, Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Hayden. Can everybody hear me? I tend to bend over when there's microphones here. So, good evening. It's very nice to be here. I go to a lot of school board meetings, and I will tell you this is one of the better smelling school board meetings I've been in. Okay? All right. I was sitting back by the popcorn for about the last 45 minutes going, this really smells good. So, it is really nice to be with you here this evening. I know you've been hard at it for almost 3 hours now, so we're not going to go through all 72 pages of the report, and the applause rises from the audience here. But I do want to take you through section by section to see what we saw in the work that was done in collaboration with leadership and some members of the school board who are participating in the creation of this survey. But let's start first, and obviously, the technology is not over my head this evening. This is great. Let's start first by talking about the process. We had a planning meeting where, again, some district leadership, some members of the board, some members of the Patron Insight team got together and said, all right, at the end of this process, what do we need to know to understand better how staff members feel, where they think the district has strengths, where they think the district has needs. And that information was taken back, and a survey was created and sort of sent back and forth via email until we, that is the group, completely satisfied that what we were going to be asking people was going to get the kind of information that we needed. Now, we chose an online format, which is fairly common for staff member surveys for really kind of 3 reasons. Number one, confidentiality. All the responses go straight to us. So there was obviously a very good, strong message to say the district itself, leadership, will not see any individual responses. Number 2, you have the opportunity to manage the participation level. That is, make certain that only one response comes from each device And most people will probably stop at one when they saw the length of the survey. So that we don't have any ballot box stuffing that would be a risk if you had a printed survey. And the simplicity of having a link encourages participation. Folks they don't have to make a real strong effort to go out and find a survey and copy it down and write things down. So that's why we use that format. The link was distributed on the 17th of May, which was about 2 weeks after we started the design process, and very actively promoted, so kudos to the district, because usually what we see is a critical mass in the first 2 or 3 days that drops like a stone, and maybe a little nudge at the end will give us well, we had that critical mass, and we did have the drop-off, but then it was steady until May 27 when we closed it, which means there were constant reminders that if you haven't done this, we really want to hear from you. We ended up with 944 respondents. Now, that means we had 944 who opened the survey and took at least some of it. And you will see the breakdown there based on their level, whether they worked in an elementary setting, a middle school setting, a high school setting, or somewhere else, and whether they were classified, certified, or administrative. This was something they identified. Our participants identified themselves in those categories. And you'll notice that all of those add to 100%. Not everyone chose to answer those questions. So that's 100% of everyone who did. In terms of the level, we had 59 folks who chose not to answer the question. In terms of certified, classified, administrative, we had 66. So that's 6% and 7%, fairly small. Those are one of those key things that we look for to say, okay, is there a trust issue? If we were in the 15, 20% range of people saying, I'm not telling them that, that would be an issue. I didn't see it with 6 or 7%.
Kyle, how does that, I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
How does that break down of percentages of levels and certified classified? How does that compare to our actual staffing percentages? Do we know?
Yeah, so from a number standpoint is what you're saying?
Well, no, just in terms of like percentage of our staff that works at the elementary versus middle and high school level. Or, I mean, did we get a pretty
Oh, I see what you're saying.
representative break? I mean,
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and I don't know if I can tell you that
and
off the cuff.
certified versus classified versus, like, did we have more certified staff as a percentage of our staff participate than with the classified staff?
So a certified classified, as far as the numbers, we're about half and half. So about 900 certified, 900 classified.
So we did have an overrepresentation in our certified staff.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as the breakdown, elementary, middle, high school, I think it's almost in thirds. I mean, elementary is maybe just a little bit bigger as far as staff, but not much. So it's almost broken up in thirds. So I would say that your elementary participation is a little bit higher than secondary. But
Thank you.
yeah, I can't quote the numbers.
It's a good
I
question.
didn't ask you that question ahead of time, so that's fair.
As we review the results, and as you look at 72 pages, if you haven't taken a glance so far, a few things to keep in mind. First of all, and probably most important, is that the data that you see in there represents the 944 folks who took the time to participate. So bear that in mind as you look at this. This is what we call self-selected. They made the decision when they saw the link to click on it to participate. So it's not intended to be a random sample. We want as many people to participate as possible, and 944 sounded pretty good. But remember that they chose to do so. And for example, in the community survey, we would use the telephone because then we can divide it up and say, okay, more people live here than live here. So bear that in mind as you look at it. And what I'm trying to say is don't get overly excited by really, really positive scores or overly down by really, really negative scores. This is great information, but it has its limits. Online surveys all do. We used weighted scales where possible, and the reason we do that is because of the simplicity of looking at the answers and saying, all right, in this group of questions, the staff members felt really good on these 3 or 4, okay on these 3 or 4, and maybe not quite so good on these 3 or 4. It provides an easier way to understand what they're really saying. Because in a lot of cases, we ask people to say, okay, do you strongly agree? Agree? Are you neutral? Disagree or strongly disagree? That's a lot of numbers. That's a lot of numbers. So by weighting it, we can say, okay, this is what the mass is telling us, if you will. Always start by looking at the overall, because the overall is the 944. When you're looking at elementary, middle, high school, et cetera, remember that there are fewer people in that group. So you want to look for trends, although individual numbers will stand out to you because they'll be either a lot larger or a bit smaller than the overall score. There are fewer people in those groups, in those smaller groups, those subgroups. So focus on the overall to start out. And always remember, each verbatim comment is one comment by one person. And I will tell you that I have never seen the word amazing more often in an online survey than I saw. So-and-so is amazing. This department is amazing. I didn't know if that was an official Lawrence word or something, but apparently it is, because there's a lot of amazing responses. We had 5 basic sections. Number 1 was climate questions. These were statements about what it's like to work at USD 497. Modestly positive to bland. And we asked people to state their level of agreement or disagreement with those statements, and then weighted those, because we wanted folks who didn't choose to answer to be eliminated from the calculation, because they would have altered we don't want to try and interpret what they meant by skipping it. So we just moved them off to the side and calculated based on those who chose to. We had a very high level of agreement with these statements. And again, they were either kind of neutral or positive. You can see the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there in order. This is in order. And if you think that number 1 really it's a nice thing to have, but it really also isn't all that important, Gallup would tell you otherwise. Having a good friend at work is critical. So having that be the highest score talks a lot about the climate. Got people who I like at work and who like me. I'm able to use my talents. I think it's a great place to work, and I'm proud to work there, and I look forward to coming to work. That's a great foundation. On the other end of that list, again, from a weighted scale perspective, you can see the 4 that were toward the bottom of the list. And you can notice a theme here. The theme is engagement, involvement, kind of leadership feels this way, and we're here down here in the trenches. That is not uncommon at all, particularly when you have 21 buildings. It's not at all uncommon to have that feeling of disconnection. Does not mean it is not an issue to be focused on, trying to improve, but what it does mean is it was not a big surprise to me. Good environment, I like working here. I feel a little disconnected at times. Staff member likes and dislikes. We gave them an open-ended opportunity to say what they like the most about their job and what they dislike the most. We coded these answers, meaning rather than present you papers with 944 likes and 944 dislikes, we said we look for common words and phrases and ideas so that we can say, all right, this is the idea, these are the ideas that were more commonly held than others, so that you can really get a sense of the areas where people really feel positive and maybe have some issues. The one-off responses are shown individually, and I just wanted to say all the verbatim comments are shown as they were typed. In other words, they were copied and pasted. And I will say that not only does your board meeting smell good, but your spelling is pretty darn good among the staff members, okay? We have seen some that not quite so good. But if you see something, remember people are typing and typing and typing. So kind of cut them a little slack, if you will. Here were the most frequently mentioned likes. I'll give you a chance to look at those because it really does speak to the environment, the work environment, and loving what you do and who you work with. Now again, these were open-ended, so we read every single comment. There weren't 944. Not everybody chose to comment, but 600 or 700 in most cases on this question. So we read everyone and said, okay, and this is actually in the order of frequency. So I love working with students, love working with my colleagues, all good stuff. Comes to dislike, kind of an echo from the climate questions. You can see these were the top 4 in terms of frequency that we had based on how we coded them. Now, you will see in the report page after page of ones that didn't quite fit or weren't in enough quantity to merit inclusion in the chart that we created for the question. You will probably see some where you'll say, well, that and that and that are kind of similar. Coding is kind of a judgment call, so what we look for are the things that clearly rise to the top, positive and negative, and then show the others, just so you can see that every single comment was read and either interpreted or presented. Perception of support by building and district leadership. We transitioned then and said, okay, please tell us your level of agreement or disagreement to my building administration is committed to, and then a list, and then central office administration is committed to the same list. These were the top 4 items on both lists. Students receiving a quality education, a positive school climate, encouraging two-way communication, and addressing the needs, concerns, and problems that educators face every day. Again, that was the top 4 on building administration, top 4 on district administration. The issue is that building administration was a little higher, which is very common. So if you kind of took the list from top to bottom, building administration's top to bottom would be here, central office would be here. And the comments were somewhat more typical. The comments were more positive at the building level, and which again is very typical. That's the day-to-day interaction. It's sort of what we say when we talk about how the general population views a school district. They view it based on their local school. If I feel the school is good, if I feel the teachers are good, then I'm going to feel good about the school district as a whole. School for staff members starts at the building level. So that's not a surprise. And none of these were kind of eyebrow raising for us as we looked at them. The initiatives, we had a long list of initiatives, and rather than go through all of them, I will just tell you that things such as blended learning, technology access and integration, we asked questions and asked people to rate things such as launch, support, ongoing training, those kinds of things, either excellent, good, fair, or poor. Most of the responses were between good and fair, with the 2 at the bottom having the highest kind of consistent marks. And please note that to get an excellent score, everyone would have to say excellent because of the weighted scale. So kind of recognize that that's an impossibility. 24 years, I haven't seen any factor get the highest score. It just doesn't work out that way. So what we're looking for is it between good and fair or fair and poor? Mostly between good and fair. And on a similar subject, the departments within the district, folks were asked to rate them on professionalism, ability to answer questions, and ability to resolve concerns. And I mean every department. And the scores there were really strong, very consistently strong across the board. So strong that there's really nothing more to say except kind of look at the numbers, with 4 being the highest possible. We had lots of 3.6s and 3.7s and 3.8s. So folks get along with each other. They have a high degree of regard for each other, which is really good, And I think, in terms of next steps, as you look at this, it's a lot of content. So our recommendation would be to identify specific areas where you think growth opportunities exist, where you say, I want to work on that number, I want to work on that result. But don't overreach. You could look at this and say, we've got 25 things we want to work on, because we ask about so many things. So focus on the ones that you think you can really make a difference, and I'm speaking in the district sense. Get folks engaged in setting the plans, launch a plan to say, okay, we're here, we want to be here when we do this next time, and then measure the results in a year or 18 months, and if you need to rework the plan, rework the plan. But it's a good start. It's a really, really good start. So now I know that's it. So, questions?
Any questions? Okay, thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
And I think best smelling meeting, that's a new criteria for me that I'll use to rate
Is
meetings
popcorn?
now, yeah.
Food never hurts, I can tell you that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Next up, And we have the Master Plan for Facilities and Operations Warehouse with Tony Barron, Executive Director of Facilities and Operations.
Good evening. Tony Barron, Executive Director, Facilities and Operations, as Marcel stated. I just want to take some time tonight to fill you in on some of the studies that we've done. Most of you, or all of you, probably have the book. Mine is 79 pages. I got the Patron Insight Survey beat, so 150 pages of wonderful information for you to read. So just real quick, we went into this study. It started probably 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, the conversation about what to do with facilities and operations. At that time, it was really one of the goals was to try to get us on site here at ESDC, and our hope was that with the city passing the police headquarters to buy some property just to the north of us, that we could purchase 6 acres from them and move our facility operations and our warehouse to the same site as ESDC. We had a really nice site plan drawn out. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. So when that didn't work out, we continued to explore other options. Engaged in an architect. BG Consultants, as you see underneath my name there, is the architect firm that we engaged to help us out with looking at some properties that we own. So I'm just going to go through it real quick here. Just some focal points. I have a bunch of information on here that's from the book. It's a lot of information. I want some focal points that I'm going to talk about here, and then I'm going to kind of fly through the slides fairly quick. And I know you'll go back and read some of this information later. So one of the board goals that prompted this this particular year is the 2016 board goal is to begin to implement the transition plan for a new facilities and operations facility and district-owned warehouse. And so one thing that we had done is we had a program overview of our current space. And I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with our current space right now. We are over at 146 Main near the hospital. We're on 1.14 acres. It's very, very tight. Our office complex is entertaining, I guess you could say. A lot of turns, a lot of narrow spaces. It's tough. We have to, particularly when we have one extra vehicle comes into the lot, you have to strategically move things around to get where you want to go and get it parked. So we're in a tight spot. We make it work. It's worked out well, and everything is going. It's going well. We're doing fine. But another place would be nice. So what we did is the program overview of the current facility. We evaluated 6 district sites, which I'll go through here through the slides. This is sites that we already own. The site study example I'll give, December 2015, we completed the original report. That was before we engaged the county, or at the same time we engaged the county in conversations about the vacant public works site on 711 East 23rd Street, which I'll get to that. And then, which leads us to the January 2016 when we became aware of that. And then former Douglas County Public Works Site study that we had done, which is an appendix at the very end of this. So you'll see the site study at the very end of the book. You'll see the appendix that has the site study for the old Douglas Public Works site. So just FYI. Like I said, I'm going to run through some of these slides. I apologize. I copied them. They're kind of small to read, but it's more I'm going to focus on some of the headlines we have. First slide I have here is basically one of the first pages in your book. It's the overview. It establishes the purpose of why we did what we did. Like I said, BG Consultants was very detail-oriented on the process and the study. And if you go down to the bottom of this slide here, you'll see the following undeveloped properties that are owned by the district that we looked at. And I'll show it on a map here later. I'll just walk through them real quick. North 1500 Road, West Bob Billings Parkway, George Williams Way, which is near Langston Hughes, just south of Langston Hughes School. Holcomb Park, which we own, a portion of 10 acres right at Holcomb Park that we own. Haskell, which would have been near the College and Career Center. And then East 1700 Road, which is very far to the southeast. It's a 70-plus acre site, undeveloped site that we own out there. And then I'm going to go to the next slide here. And then the last site we looked at was East Heights, using it once school was out, trying to use it as a site for us to develop. District properties, this just kind of shows another breakdown of all the properties that we have, and my main focus here was to show the second red bullet there, the district administrative and support facilities, the ESDC, which were on 5.78 acres. Not included in this particular study, but we did try to fit a warehouse on the current site that we have, so that has been talked about. We just came to the point that it was just a lot of truck traffic, a lot of ins and outs that just didn't seem to make much sense, and at the same time, we engaged in the study here. So we did look at it from a high level, decided to move on to our other properties. Elementary schools and all that, as I said, our site is a 1.14 acre. We currently lease warehouse, 910 East 29th Street. Now, this study is showing probably a false square footage of what we used to lease. I think Paula could probably tell you how many times we've been moved around in that 322,000 square foot warehouse, which if you think about it, we lease roughly anywhere from 20,000 to 32,000 square feet. So you could be moved around 10 times in that thing. And I think we've been in about every single square foot probably. And
Paula
so
just held up, we moved 4 times?
4 times.
Okay.
So we currently lease. It's been working for us, but it's been kind of messy, to say the least. In the middle of all the bond construction, we get a 60-day notice to say, hey, by the way, you have to move. And so it's been really rough. So that really has led us to believe it's time to own our own space. So just other properties. So right here is the map that I told you I was going to show you. And if you look right now, obviously the ESDC campus there is on the north end. And if you look at the reference to where we're at, everything is kind of outlined on the outskirts of town, which also makes it a little difficult when you think about all the runs that we do from the warehouse, when you think about the numerous facilities and operations personnel, the trades guys, the grounds guys that we have. Trying to find a location that's centrally located is kind of difficult. Holcomb Park probably would have been the best option here. We engaged the city in some conversation in that, and upon the recommendation that that'd be a very tough sell to build an industrial site in the middle of a neighborhood, plus the land which was deeded to the city and the school district. We weren't quite sure if that was an option. So that was probably our best location from a centrally located standpoint. College and Career Center looked pretty attractive to us. When we build a warehouse there, we basically take up all of our educational space for any future expansion. The site's barely a year old, so we decided that might not be the best option for that also. As I said, the East 1700 is way out there. East Heights is next to 2 historical sites, which would have made it difficult also to build a nice, pretty facilities and operations site there. So, and then, like I said, West Bob Billings, North 1500 Road, that's pretty far out west.
And Tony, we may have talked about this at a meeting, but you mentioned the Holcomb Park and the deed restrictions. That's actually, that property was given to the school district, I believe, and there was a restriction in the bequest that it be maintained for recreational purposes. I know we talked about that in facility. I couldn't remember if we had talked about that at the board meeting.
That is correct. Yeah, we did.
So there really was some pretty substantial legal concerns there that we would end up not being able to do anything because it would violate the conditions of the gift.
That is correct, yes. It was donated for recreational space, yep. This next map, this is kind of a scattergram that Clint put together, which I really like. Every single dot on there represents a school. And so if you look at that, the locations we looked at are identified. All the other dots are the schools within our school district here. And so, like I said, it's becoming really difficult to find a very viable space centrally located at a good price, I guess I should say, because there's property out there, but the price has to be right also. So this just gives a good peripheral of what all is going on. And just to let you know, see if I can use my pointer, right about here is where that's about where the 23rd site is. So a little bit better. An example of a site study, I'm just going to walk you through real quick the site study that was done at the College and Career Center, and just kind of give you an example of what it looks like. As you can see, it has a description at the top of what it is. Clint with BG Consultants did a great job of listing benefits of the site, and then down to the next bullet point, construction, the zoning, and then the project costs. These are high-level numbers, and this is just a warehouse only on this site, so this does not include the facilities and operations. The only thing we were planning on building here was a warehouse, which we had several restrictions on some of our properties. We could only fit a warehouse or a facilities and operations site. So I believe the 1500 Road, the Bob Billings and George Williams Way, and then the North 1700 Road were the only three sites that we could get both facilities on. The others were either or, and they were the better locations. So another thing that constricted us from those sites also was the site improvement costs. Nothing had utilities to it, so we would be spending a lot of money in getting water, sewer, electric out there also. This just shows a aerial map or a map of what it was going to look like, of what it might look like if we were to build there. And then I'm going to move on. In that particular areas, that was just an example of the 6 studies that we went over. So that was an example of the Haskell site. I'm going to go talk about the Douglas County Public Works site now. I put together a little bit of a timeline here for you. Public Works, they moved this operation to another site in April of 2015. So this building has been vacant since then. We kind of had an idea that the county was interested in our building, didn't know how serious they were. And so just Kyle and I had a conversation and realized that their building had been sitting vacant. So we just made a simple phone call and asked about it. And it worked out well. It was at the same time that they were starting to engage architects in the, I believe it's a mental crisis health center that they're looking at building where our current facility and operations building is. And so we started a good mutually beneficial conversation regarding the 2 sites. If you look down there, December of 2015, we began discussing what it might look like for the both of us, which is at the same time we got our first report, site study report. Kyle and I took a tour in January along with our architects, and he began the site study for us to see if it was even going to be possible for us to use it, if it offered any benefits. Decided that it was. It might be something we want to look at. So what does that look like from a financial standpoint? You know, we feel our property's worth something. They feel their property's worth something. So a third-party appraiser was probably a good idea. So in February of 16, we hired a third-party appraiser to give us some values for both properties, both ours and theirs. We got the numbers back. They looked pretty favorable to both of us. So we began the negotiations then in March. And June, July, as you can see, we had to take a zoning request. We worked with our civil engineer just for the simple fact that we'd be housing buses and a lot of traffic would be coming in and out. And that also, I don't know, not sure if I didn't put that on there, but it also required a traffic study, which we did also to do that. On July 25th, zoning was approved at the Planning Commission. And future meetings here, August 10th, we are hopeful that the County Commission, they'll consider this for approval. We'll see where they go with it. City Commission will approve the zoning changes. If they consider doing that, it's going to be up for approval. And hopefully we can get yes on those 2 votes and come back to you on September 12th and get an approval from you. So, any questions on the timeline? So the site study for this particular site, I'll go into a little bit more detail. And like I said, I do apologize for the quality of the frames here. But if you look, there's plenty of core space, which Clint really made a pretty good point of saying that there's 7 acres here, so a lot of space to work. And we also have the cost benefit versus an undeveloped site. The undeveloped site had all the infrastructure costs associated with it, which each one of them were coming in right around $1 million. So this already has infrastructure in it, which is it's a huge savings to us. Remodeling renovation can be performed at an intermittent pace, so it's not like we have to come in and build the whole site at once. We can kind of move in stages, which would be really beneficial for us. The location. It's in a great location for us. I feel like it is, and I'll show a better map here pretty soon. But I'm going to go down to the project costs real quick for you. If you look at the project costs, for us to build out the entire site, we're looking at just under $4 million, which really was our goal. Kind of Kyle and I had talked about what a good number may be, and that was right about the top of our range that we felt we could manage. One of the initial needs we're going to have to have is a warehouse. Our current lease runs out of our warehouse in December of this year, and so that's kind of an important part of this step here. So we have very high-level plans for a warehouse right now. We'll probably start to get into more detail here very soon. Just a breakdown of all the costs there. If you look, we'll end up going to build a new office facility. Maintenance complex got to be renovated, more fleet storage. And what I'll do here, I have the numbers there. Why don't I just go to the next slide and kind of give you an overview of what it looks like. Just for reference, this is the current site right here, right in the middle. You'll see several outbuildings. 23rd on the upper right-hand corner of your screen is 23rd and Haskell, if that'll give you a reference. To the left, where the softball field is, that is Haskell University. The linear sidewalk going north and south is Burroughs Creek Trail. So if that helps give you a reference to where we're at. To the north, the street run along the north, as you can see, is 23rd Street. So 7 acres, several outbuildings. Like I said, kind of an ideal space. It's kind of, the buildings are in a little bit of a different configuration that would be beneficial to us. And so some of the buildings we decided we could use. There's some that will probably have to be demoed just for the simple fact that they have no purpose for us. So I'll move on to the next slide, which will show a little bit of the suggested site plan. So if you look here, as you can see, the 2 areas in yellow are going to be the new construction for us. The yellow on the north side of the plan is going to be a warehouse, approximately 13,500 square foot warehouse, which is going to have, it's going to be adjoining a building that's ready on site that's approximately 4,500 square feet. So we've got a pretty decent amount of storage there. And then that'll probably be one of the first stages of construction that we would consider. And then the building to the left side of the plan there is the new office complex. It would be a 2-story complex. If we do house, if First Student does, however you would say it, lease this land from us to store their buses to gain some savings, you can see towards the bottom of the plan, towards the south end there, is where we have the buses located. We would share the office facility with them. We feel like there's some mutual benefits we can have, break rooms possibly, and just other areas, big conference room that we can share together. They have approximately, I believe they have about 106 on staff. We have 105 on staff. So what a great place. We have large meeting areas. We're always struggling, so the both of us could benefit from a large conference room / meeting area that we could share. So there's a site plan of that. My next slide is going to kind of show them side by side so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. So we feel pretty good about this. We've gone over several configurations, gone over several ideas of how it's going to operate. We're to the point now where we have to start to decide on something because it's that time. And so Paula has been engaged with us on the warehouse and a few conversations with BG consultants. We've been engaged with Clint as far as how this is going to look. And I kind of want to offer it up for any questions that you have right now. I went through that fairly quick and just want to open it up to you now.
Any questions?
I think it looks great. I'm really excited. This has been a long time coming, and I think this will improve a lot of things for the district, so I hope that it goes through.
Yeah, I think so. I'm excited about it.
So this has been probably longer than 3 years. I think Paula and I started talking about this my first year here, about what we need to do with the warehouse to expand, and then what we needed to do with facilities and operations to expand and meet the needs for both. So Tony spoke to the fact that the warehouse is probably the biggest priority because we have a lease that's up in December. And Paula said, our motion, we have 4 times we've been moved, and we could get kicked out tomorrow or given our 30 days notice that we would have to go elsewhere. So we need to construct a warehouse sooner rather than later, and at least the bare bones of one. So legal counsel has looked at an agreement. A contract has been written up. So Brad Finkeldye helped us with Stevens and Brand. And the agreement is for exchange of the property along with cash from us for $500,000. So if you went straight off appraisal values, we would have paid more than that. So we were able to whittle that down a little bit because their property obviously would appraise much higher than ours, given it was on over 7 acres and ours is 1. So there's things to be done to upgrade the site, but as Tony mentioned, the infrastructure's there. A lot of it's 75% of it's paved, and so it's has a lot of components that make it very feasible, favorable for a long time. Opportunity to have buses there at some point if we want to be able to pursue that, and so savings would be immediate. You know, we're looking at $100,000 that we're no longer paying at a general fund for a warehouse. We're looking at, if transportation were to move there, at least $100,000 in savings there. So, you know, $200,000 a year out of, you know, general fund savings. So when you're looking at budget efficiencies, it's a no-brainer.
I do have a question, and I apologize if you said this, but kind of what's the, if everything goes according to plan, what's the timeline we would anticipate that we would be able to actually move into these facilities?
Well, my estimation of that would be upon everybody saying yes, coming back to you on the 12th, and then probably within a month, I would think that we'd turn over keys. And the county's been really good about working with us, where they would probably let us start moving some stuff on site. And warehouse, that's the big question mark. How quick can we build a warehouse? And you think about it, it's a very simple build, but simplicity doesn't always go as easy as you think. The great thing about it is if we gain possession of this, and for some reason we do get kicked out of the warehouse, there's several buildings that we can scatter stuff in right now. So that's a plus. That's good for us. So we could scatter some things. There's plenty of storage, and then once we build the warehouse, we could put stuff in the storage, and that would work. That'd be beneficial. And then the goal for F&O to move would probably be next summer of 2007. What is it? Are we in 16? Yeah, 2017. So would be the goal for us to get over there, hopefully in time for the start of the new school year. So we have to time it between those bond construction projects.
Yeah, a small window of
Small
opportunity.
window.
Part of the contract and agreement would be that we get immediate access to the site. There's a portion of it that they would want to keep because the police department uses one building for some items, and but then for them to get access, it wouldn't happen until October of 2017. So that gives us a full year to get our facilities and operations, office area built, get the other stuff remodeled, get it up to this, you know, the status that we want it to be, and get them moved. So it gives us a little bit of flexibility. Warehouse first, then F&O, and a year.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. All right. And last, we have approval of the 2016-2017 budget for USD 497 with Kathy Johnson, Director of Finance. And Julie, has anybody else showed up to make comment on? No. So closed. All right, so I officially close the budget hearing.
So there's Kathy Johnson, Director of Finance. So there's really no other formal presentation for you. We've kind of given you a lead up to this, and we've published it in the paper. Your hearing was earlier. So basically what you're doing tonight is approving what we call the Code 99, or those maximums that we talked about, and a mill levy. And the mill levy is a projected mill levy down of 3.165 from 1516. And so what you're approving are these budget maximums. The detailed budgets behind them will be built and information disseminated accordingly. So really, we just need a motion to approve.
I'll move that the Board of Education approve the 2016-2017 budget and mill levy for USD 497 as noted on the State of Kansas Budget Code 99 form.
Second.
Thanks, Vanessa. Moved and seconded. Janice, should I ask, just to make sure no discussion?
Yes.
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 Okay. Thanks, Kathy. All right, I think that wraps everything up.
Actually, before we adjourn, just a question. I'm looking at announcements, and we don't have a second meeting in August listed. Do we not have a meeting in August? Okay.
No.
We might want to correct the calendar, because the calendar actually has a August meeting listed, a second August meeting listed. Right, right. Okay.
Okay. All right, yeah.
Thanks for the
no,
clarification.
We do not have a meeting, second meeting in August. Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.